Let's see what kind of cell phone radiation measurement figures we are getting here. 4G network level of SAR is popping up to 10 watts per kilogram, which is actually 5 times more than the regulation limit.
When you put your cell phone close to your skin, tightly in pocket, then skin or your body absorbs more radiation than safety limits would permit.
Matkapuhelinten säteilyllä ei ole tieteellisesti todennettuja haitallisia vaikutuksia ihmisten terveyteen.
Sperm counts had dropped to below 50% of normal in every single technologically advanced country on Earth.
So recently, the government of Geneva decided to stop the installation of 5G, but not only 5G, all the technologies are stopped.
My conclusion is that electrosmog is disturbing definitely the behavior of honeybees.
Children of nowadays, they are exposed at an earlier age. They are very likely to continue to be exposed for longer periods of time.
Children are not small adults. They are more sensitive.
We do need more research, and that's what we are also trying to contribute.
Tässä vaiheessa ei ainakaan voi sanoa, että ne olisi vaarallisia.
We don't know.
The funding agencies don't consider this as a high priority at the moment.
Studies show that when you use regular cell phone, your risk of brain cancer is increasing.
Allez, petite. Tranquille. Tranquille. Smoke nowadays, is helping the beekeeper to calm the bees. Oh, there are a lot here. In order to perform this experiment, I have to record the noise that the hive is producing. And for this, I have to install a microphone in this so-called nourishing hole. Okay. The idea is to have a small discussion or music in this radio apparatus so that this cellular phone is continuously emitting as if somebody would speak through his phone. The idea is to check whether or not the electromagnetic fields emitted by cellular phones would have an impact on the behavior of the honeybees in the hive. So the idea is just to start the phone call, start the recording, and just wait. And in 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, to stop the communication, to go to the computer with the sound file and to analyze what was going on in the hive. My conclusion is that electrosmog is disturbing definitely the behavior of honeybees. Not only the honeybees are affected, We know honeybees because they are in the hive, we can observe them. But in nature, you have 200 or 300 wild bees, which are also affected with bumblebees, which also help pollination. And the forthcoming 5G will also affect their behavior. So at the end, you will have maybe a collapse of all insects, especially the pollinating insects. And without pollination, you have no fruits, you have no vegetables, and then big trouble. Forthcoming 5G will go up to 60 gigahertz. Now we have 3.8. And according to scientific literature, problems will arrive as soon as we go above a certain value, 6 gigahertz. And in this scientific article, it was shown that insects will suffer in their physiology, behavior, and other problems due to this 5G. And if we have problems with insects, then like a stone rolling, we will have problems on birds, other animals, and in final, we have problems with humans. There is definitely a lack of research. In order to make research, you need infrastructure, you need scientists, you need knowledge, and you need money. And not everybody, everywhere can do this research. You have to have an intent, you have a decision, political decision to do this research, and this is lacking.
Bees and insects are not the only ones being affected by the increase in radiation pollution. For example, a German study found that base stations affect the way trees grow near them. Another major aspect is the increase in energy consumption. If 5G will deliver up to 1,000 times more data, it could also consume up to 1,000 times as much energy. According to a 2020 study, 5G generates twice as much greenhouse gas than wired fiber optics. If there are hazards for the environment, what about humans?
We have recruited people who are using mobile phones and collected data on the numbers and durations of their phone calls. We have also asked them about information concerning their lifestyles that are pertinent for cancer risk. And the COSMOS study is rather broad in its scope, in the sense that once we have established cohort, we know about their mobile phone use, then we can follow them up and analyze various health outcomes. The primary interest includes, for instance, brain tumors. We will also analyze several symptoms, including headaches, sleep problems. When the COSMOS study was planned and launched about 10 years ago, then the exposure scenario was still slightly different from today. We were very much focusing on mobile phone use for calls. That has changed afterwards. Nowadays, with lower field strength from the phone, the exposure levels might not be so different during the phone call than they are from the ubiquitous other sources of radio frequency fields, from wireless networks and so forth.
Henry Ley from the University of Washington looked into the way funding affects research results in EMF health studies. He found that studies funded by the industry mainly found no harmful health effects. Independently funded studies, on the other hand, mostly found harmful health effects.
In Finland, we did get funding from the industry to launch the study early on through a national research program, and later on to carry out the second round survey from Mobile Manufacturers Forum. But it's very obvious that such funding has to be arranged in a way that still maintains the complete scientific independence of the researchers.
So far, the results of the COSMOS study show that the most avid cell phone users report having slight increase in headaches after 4 years of phone use.
When you put your cell phone close to your skin, tightly in pocket, then skin or your body absorbs more radiation than safety limits would permit. So there is also this problem that with smartphones, we absorb more radiation than predicted in places where our pockets are, where we are keeping our cell phone.
There is a lot of debate about the health effects of radio frequency radiation. One thing everyone agrees on is that heating of the cells is bad. All the safety limits are based on preventing heating of the cells, but are there other possible mechanisms of danger?
First of all, it's necessary to distinguish between biological effects and health effects. Biological effects, it is simply any kind of effect which occurs, which happens in biological materials. So in our cells or tissues, when we expose person or animal or plant to cell phone radiation in this case, whether there is something happening. Health effect is different thing. Not every biological effect will lead to health effect. And in principle, one could say that there is number of studies showing biological effects, and there are so many of those studies that it is unfair and scientifically wrong to say that all of them are mistakes done by scientists.
In 2018, the U.S. National Toxicology Program published data from long-term research into the harmful health effects of radiation. They found clear evidence that high exposure to radiofrequency radiation used by cell phones was associated with heart tumors in male rats. They also found some evidence of brain tumors and DNA damage.
The main concern, I think, really has to do with male fertility. Okay, so there was what's called a meta-analysis review that was published in 2017 by Levine et al. And they found that sperm counts had dropped to below 50% of normal in every single technologically advanced country on Earth. So we have this incredibly widespread drop in sperm counts. And, we don't know for certain that this is caused by the EMFs, but we simply don't have any other hypothesis that makes any sense. So we know the EMFs can do this. I'm not saying that people cannot question this, but this is a major issue.
Studying the health effects of radio frequencies is nothing new. The U.S. Naval Medical Research Institute published a compilation of over 2,300 studies on biological effects in 1971. The effects include heating of organs, muscle contractions, decreased fertility, headaches, insomnia, fatigue, and depression, just to name a few.
So the neurological and neuropsychiatric effects are highly advanced in our society already, and they include the kinds of things that we say everybody or many people complain about. I can't sleep, tired all the time, I'm depressed, my memory doesn't work, I'm anxious, all the kinds of things that are rampant in our modern societies, and we talk about them, they're caused by stress. Well, they're not really caused by stress, they're caused by electromagnetic fields, and we know that. And there are many, many studies that have found these things.
Big question is, will all people be affected or not? My opinion is that it will be rather limited to smaller subpopulation of people, that not everyone will be affected at these levels of radiation exposure that are permitted by current safety limits, but there might be some subpopulation of people, they might be more sensitive.
There is a lot of concern about how radiation affects children. For example, Dr. Om Gandhi from the University of Utah shows how much deeper a child's softer tissue absorbs radiation compared to an adult.
Exposure of children is different. Radiation can go deeper and more of it can be absorbed. And otherwise, children are more sensitive to different environmental factors, what indirectly means that they might be more sensitive than adults to cell phone radiation.
I think it is sort of logical to think that children might be a special group. They might be more sensitive to the health effects because that's the case for ionizing radiation, though it's different from electromagnetic fields, but also from the perspective that children of nowadays, they are exposed at an earlier age. They are very likely to continue to be exposed for longer periods of time. So I can see the rationale for that.
This what we know is limited to some 20, maybe 30 years of use of cell phone. But we have no faintest idea what will be if there is a lifetime of usage of cell phone. We have no slightest idea.
We use this technology 24/7. With 5G, the Internet of Things, and Starlink, there is no escape. Adverse health effects are possible. So, are the safety regulations sufficient?
Matkapuhelinten turvallisuutta valvotaan samaan tapaan kuin EU:ssa kaikkien kuluttajatuotteiden, eli valmistaja vastaa käytännössä siitä, että tuotteet on vaatimusten mukaisia, teettää niille valmistusvaiheessa jo kaikki tarvittavat testit. Viranomaisen tehtävä on ottaa markkinoilta näytteitä. Matkapuhelinten tapauksessa otetaan noin 10 matkapuhelinmallia vuosittain mitattavaksi.
Every phone has a warning label. Why they have it? Is that because they might think that the phone is causing harm for the people's health? We were very surprised that the current regulation is supposing that the phone is 15 millimeters from the consumer's skin, from the consumer's skull. And that's not exactly how the consumer is using the phone. When he's talking, the phone is connected next to his head. There is a 0 millimeters distance to his skull. And also when the phone is in the pocket, it's just a thin fabric which is giving the distance with the phone and the skin.
Because there are health risks, activists have demanded the application of the precautionary principle. The mobile industry, on the other hand, refuses. Actually, in their own guidance, they instruct not going there. They say the precautionary recommendations are likely to increase concern and may undermine confidence in their scientific base.
On this WHO EMF project was established in late 90s. Idea was to have in WHO organization that will be dealing with non-ionizing radiation effects. Idea was to provide governments with guidance, what is safe, what is not safe. In practice, EMF project, it is more or less one person, or she needs to rely on somebody else's opinion. And this opinion is being provided by ICNIRP, International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. And in practice, it is this way that WHO is sort of front for ICNIRP opinions. And biggest problem with ICNIRP is this, that it is composed of scientists who have the same opinion. So all of them, if you would think about this bell curve, how different opinions are spread. On one end of this bell curve are those who are saying that there is really big health risk. On the other end of bell curve are those who say there is no any problem. ICNIRP is there. Whenever somebody retires from ICNIRP, new person is being elected and selected by ICNIRP members. So they are self-selecting new members. So this is sort of private club which self-propagates the same idea.
In June 2020, 2 EU MPs published a report about ICNIRP. The organization is accused of systematically ignoring any scientific evidence that suggests or proves that radio frequencies have adverse health effects. It is also accused of being a non-accountable and one-sided organization. It holds a monopoly on safety guidelines and presents itself as an independent body of scientific advisors. The most important conclusion of the report is that for really independent scientific advice, we cannot rely on ICNIRP, and yet they offer advice on human health and safety to governments.
SAR-arvo on mittayksikkö, joka kuvaa tai radiotaajuisen säteilyn aiheuttamaa altistumista ihmiselle. SAR-arvolle on määritetty turvaraja siten, että Suomessa on asetuksella säädetty sellainen SAR-arvo kuin 2 wattia per kilo päähän ja kehoon. Ja se koskee muun muassa matkapuhelimia. Tämä arvo perustuu Euroopan unionin ministerineuvoston suositukseen vuodelta 1999. Se perustuu vuonna 1998 julkaistuun ohjearvoon, jonka on julkaissut kansainvälinen ionisoimattoman säteilyn komissio. Perustuu käytännössä laajaan kirjallisuuskatsaukseen siihen. Raja-arvot, mitä on silloin 1998 asetettu, ei ota mitenkään kantaa siihen, että mistä se altistus tulee. Ne keskittyy puhtaasti radiotaajuisen säteilyn ja kudoksen vuorovaikutukseen. Ja siinä mielessä uusi tekniikka ei millään tavalla automaattisesti tee niistä vanhentuneita. Altistuksen määrä on matkapuhelintekniikoiden myötä lisääntynyt ja sitä kautta on asia myös tutkittu paljon enemmän kuin vuonna 1998 oli. Ja näitä rajoja vastaan on tehty aika paljon kirjallisuuskatsauksia, selvitetty, että mitä tämänhetkinen tieto sanoo niiden rajojen ajantasaisuudesta. Ja edelleen ei ole löytynyt selvää näyttöä siitä, että rajoja pienemmällä säteilyllä olisi mitään haitallisia terveysvaikutuksia.
Safety limits that Finland implements are safety limits that are recommended by ICNIRP, International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. Are these safety limits sufficient? That's a good question. I think that they are not, and I think that we have indirect evidence that they are not sufficient. Namely, there is a series of epidemiological studies, population studies, examining whether cell phone radiation causes brain cancer in people. And there is a series of 3 different studies done in different population of people that indicate that if person is using cell phone for 10 years or longer and every day for half an hour or longer, the risk of developing brain cancer is increasing. So the one study said 40% increase, one study 100%, one study 170%. And this is this indirect evidence that safety limits are not okay. Because all those people, they were using cell phones that are in compliance with current safety limits. This indicates indirectly that those safety limits are not protecting sufficiently people if risk is increasing.
No, terveysvaikutusten tutkimuksessa on epävarmuuksia. Kysymys ehkä enemmän siitä, että kuinka suuria ne epävarmuudet on. Vuonna 2011 kansainvälinen syövän tutkimuslaitos luokitteli radiotaajuisen säteilyn luokkaan 2B. Jos vaikka siitä arviosta lähtee, niin tällöin aika monialainen arvostettu asiantuntijaryhmä päätyi sellaiseen tulokseen, että radiotaajuinen säteily on mahdollinen karsinogeeni. Katsottiin, että tutkimustietoa on aika paljonkin. Osa siitä näyttää viittaavan siihen, että haitallisia terveysvaikutuksia voi olla, mutta tutkimusnäytön perusteella ei missään nimessä voida päätellä, että se olisi syy-yhteys syövän ja matkapuhelimen käytön välillä olisi todistettu.
Yeah, as a telecommunication professional, I was also a heavy user of mobile phone, and as well as my partners coming from the same industry. And we had talks with each other that if this is any good for us to talk so much with the cell phone. So we started to take a closer look for the regulation, the existing regulation, that what are the permitted levels of the radiation that the phone is producing for the consumer. And we were quite surprised that there was any institution which is really monitoring the cell phone radiation from the consumer's point of view. Most of the industry, like operators and telecommunication authorities, they were measuring just the base station antennas radio frequency exposure levels. But the main producer of the exposure, which is the phone, was really not monitored at all. Okay. The responsibility today it's 100% on the consumer side. It's not taken with the telecommunication authorities or European Union or FCC or with the telecommunication operators, neither with the mobile phone manufacturers.
Jää tietysti viime kädessä jokaisen omaan harkintaan, että miten tällaiseen tieteelliseen epävarmuuteen suhtautuu. Me ollaan opastettu Säteilyturvakeskuksen kannanotossa ja viestinnässä vähentämään lasten altistumista silloin, kun se on helposti mahdollista.
So there are regulations on cell phone radiation, but it is not necessarily enough. And as a consumer, you need to be aware of the risks. With the launch of 5G, people around the world have been further alarmed. 5G's installation has even halted in many places, such as Brussels, Geneva, and Milan.
We don't have faintest idea how millimeter waves will affect our skin. That skin has profound effects on what is happening inside our body. So all these external factors, light or UV, they affect our skin, and skin affects what is happening.
So recently the government of Geneva decided to stop the installation of 5G, but not only 5G, all the technologies are stopped. Today in Switzerland we are not in the millimeter wave sector. So basically the 5G is developing, but in the same range of frequencies as 4G and 3G. So we are in kind of a known territory, if you want, as regards frequencies. Some people are just concerned about the multiplication of antennas. Others are concerned about the fact that there will be a lot of connected objects in their homes. Some people are concerned about the data that will be collected somewhere, and they don't know how, they don't know who will use this data. Of course, there is one main concern, is the health of the people.
What must be done is a halt, a stop of this 5G, especially above 6 gigahertz. Stop and study. What are the effects on this, of this 5G on animals, plants, on the whole creation?
So what should you do? You can debate about the details, but it seems certain that this technology and its use is not 100% safe. There are safety limits, but are they sufficient? People do get sick, some with cancer and some with more minor ailments. The best advice is to start limiting your use and keeping a distance between you and the sources of radiation.